So shall we start? Am I audible to all of you? Uh, so please mute yourself, and whenever there would be any kind of queries in the last, uh, um, we'll discuss about that. Okay. So today we'll discuss about the most significant theory of public administration, that is decision making theory. And as I told you, that decision making theory have emerged as a critique to the classical public administration theories. Classical public administration theories, as we have already discussed, that it is very much focusing on the structure of the organization and different dimensions of the organization, principles, structure, and the productivity particularly. However, so far as modern and neoclassical theories are concerned, they are essentially focusing on, particularly the modern theories. It evolved as a critique to the classical theories of public administration. So modern theories are actually, they derived their epistemological concerns from positivist paradigm, and in that positivist paradigm, they focused on the behavioral aspect of the organization, maybe the behavior of the administrator, and of course the interaction, the relations between employer and employee, and how actually the informality as a domain has evolved uh, in the sphere of formal organization. So that becomes the main concern of modern theories of public administration. So here one can classify them like, if we take into account Simon's theory, Herbert Simon's theory. So it is coming under the decision making theory. While discussing towards Chris Igris, McGregor, so they have elaborately talked about the social psychological theories and its implication on public administration discipline itself. So here today we'll discuss about Herbert Simon's decision making theory, and it was actually Herbert Simon who particularly questioned on the ground that whether science, public administration could be treated as a science or not. If you read the his contemporaries like Robert Dahl, so Robert Dahl also had addressed the issues relating to whether public administration to be treated as science or not. So but the explanations, though both of the scholars, they were focusing on this single question, but their explanations towards that how science in public administration could be practiced, or how science in public administration could be located, that explanation varies from each other. So of course, in your syllabus or content, writings of Robert Dahl had not been mentioned. But if while you are reading about comparative public administration, definitely you have to read Robert Dahl's writing on the science of public administration. So he has actually written about the science of public administration, three problems. So his analysis about that how far public administration could be taken as a science, and if it is science, then there is a necessity to for the public administration to come out of American centric biasness, or you could say that we are using the word ethnocentrism. So ethnocentrism is something that where we are thinking that the knowledge or the kind of information which we are getting, that is very much confined to a single geographical space. So while Robert Dahl is claiming that public administration scholars, they need to come out of ethnocentrism, so he insisted that public administration study needs to be undertaken beyond American society, and the theoretical argument or the proposition which were considered to be the original way to understand what public administration is, how public administration needs to be studied, so that needs to be validated through across the societies. Well, if we go back to the Herbert Simon, uh, just 1 second. Sorry. So here that the how actually science of public administration could be identified, on that ground actually Herbert Simon made departure from the classical scholars, maybe Weber or Taylor. So he differed from them on the ground that if public administration needs to be studied scientifically, then it is necessary that to observe what is happening in the organization. Okay, that is his core argument. The core argument is not that what classical scholars they focused on, that how organization needs to be, or how actually the purpose of the organization needs to be sustained. So, while critiquing them, Herbert Simon thesis central argument was that if we wanted to establish science in public administration, or you could say that if we want to study public administration in a scientific way, then we need to understand the organizations who are dealing with issues of public affairs, how actually they are functioning, how they are actually the personnel, the administrator, how actually they are exhibiting their behavior in terms of decision making. So with this actually he provided the logic, the limitations with the classical theories of organization or classical form of organization, that how actually those classical theories they are essentially, they have essentially focused on the physiological part of the organization, the physical aspect of the organization. They are not really dealt into the functional aspect of the organization. So let me show you some of the slides, though regarding Herbert Simon I have not made elaborately the slide, but I have tried to club it some points, then I will explain the concept uh, uh, as it is. Okay, is it visible to you? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Visible. Yes, ma'am.
So these are about the starting point, that actually why actually the necessity was occurred, which led to the genesis of behavioral approach in public administration. Okay, so this slide is telling about that as I told you that if we classify the paradigms of public administration, the first two paradigms of public administration, they were the product before or during the interwar period. So up to 1930s, or you could say, or up to 1940s, the paradigms which were concentrated on politics, administration, dichotomy, and principles of public administration. So they have developed during that interwar period. But while during the interwar period, many things actually have been experienced by both Western world and also non-Western world. So far as issues relating to the Western world was concerned, that they were very much concerned about that how actually um, mm, those new nations which have emerged after the Second World War, so how actually they are going to set up their government and set up the agencies like bureaucracy. So that was the concern. Their concern, definitely in international politics, we are studying that such concern had emerged in order to expand their influence on the third world states. So here, that no doubt such kind of things had occurred in order to pursue the ambition of the Western power over the non-Western societies. But at the same time, it has also created a new directions of research, that to understand that whether the Western norms and ideas, particularly in different disciplines, they are really accepted or found to be prevailed in the social realities of non-Western societies or not. So actually that led to the develop genesis of behavioral approach in public administration. Of course, behavioral approach has been studied in other disciplines as well, like sociology, political science. uh, so it is not merely confined to the public administration only. The concern of behavioral approach is to know that how actually the things are going on, how actually while we are studying any organization, while we are studying on a community or an individual, how actually that studied object exhibiting the behavior. So while coming to the public administration, definitely it is the bureaucracy, it is the administrative apparatus, it is the it is about those organizations who are dealing with the issues of public affairs. Then in that circumstances, the focus of behavioral approach in public administration is basically to study the administrative behavior. Okay. So, with regard to administrative behavior in bureaucracy, then how actually human relations been taken place, that we have already studied in the Elton Mao's human relations theory, and also we'll also study about more about that while we'll discuss about the socio-psychological theory and its implication on public administration by studying Chris Igres, McGregor, all these people. So in that regard, if we concentrate on Herbert Simon's argument, so his main contribution was on the administrative behavior, and how this administrative behavior is actually shaping the decision in the organization. That is the central concern of Herbert Simon. So for this actually he was recognized widely and also been awarded with the Nobel Prize. So here, according to some scholars, Max Weber discussed the anatomy of organizations. Okay, whereas Herbert Simon discussed its physiology, and some of its important contributions are administrative behavior, fundamental research in administration, organization, and human problem solving. And so, in recognition of his outstanding contribution in analyzing decision making process, he was awarded with the Nobel Prize that I had already told you. And here, actually, in pursuing his work, he was greatly influenced by Mary Parker Follett and also Elton Mayo. So, no doubt, Elton Mayo, uh, Herbert Simon, Chris Igris, McGregor, all those people, they have studied their center of research, or you could say that central object of inquiry concentrated on human being, but they varies from each other. Okay. And Simon's views on classical theory, decision making and execution of decision, bounded rationality, models of decision making behavior, organizational influence, and use of computers in decision making, all these are coming under his specialization. So these views of Herbert Simon have been adopted from his original book, Administrative Behavior, a study of decision making process in administrative organization. Hmm. So first thing is that, Mm, no doubt. We are talking about that Herbert Simon had studied extensively about administrative behavior. He argued that the focus of public administration need to be on learning that how actually administrator behaves. So then only we could be able to establish the argument that this is the scientific way to study public administration. So such kind of argument evolve uh, with his understanding that about that how actually classical organizations are failing to go towards in studying public administration empirically or critically. So in that regard, that Herbert Simon's critique about the classical organization have started with the critical by getting the critical concerns relating to principles of administration. So he calls the principles of administration as proverbs. And here, for him, that all these principles of administration, which have been considered to be the central aspect of the organization by the classical organizational scholars, actually in reality they are mutually contradictory pairs. So here, the concern for the Herbert Simon is that, no doubt, while we are saying about that these principles, they need to govern the organization. They need to, they are there that in that if any scholar wanted to study what organization is, then that scholar needs to begin with the principles of public administration or principles of organization. However, these principles are essentially not very much single concept. They, while studying them, definitely they are contradictory concepts found to be emerged. So, for almost every principle, one can find an equally plausible and acceptable contradictory principle. Although the two principles of pair will lead to exactly opposite organizational recommendations, there is nothing in the theory to indicate which the proper one to apply is. So, here actually, Herbert Simon shares his confusion regarding how actually the principle needs to be applied. Suppose we are saying that centralization as a principle in the organization. No doubt it is one of the principle. So here that uh, but it has also a counter principle, that is decentralization. So in that circumstances it is very difficult to decide that, or come to the conclusion that while we are saying okay this needs to be centralized, then the scope of decentralization uh, would be there or not, it would be very difficult to decide. Then also while we are saying about the decentralization, then what would be the scope of centralization? So here it is very complicated to come up with a fixed recommendation that okay this is the perfect way to move the organization. He has also cited certain examples, like you take the case of span of control. So here, span of control means a superior can control effectively only a limited number of subordinates. And that's the what the decision of sorry the most the definition, or you could say the span of control as a concept largely understood to be that there must be a superior who can control effectively the subordinates, and the subordinates are needs to be limited number so that uh, any kind of ineffectiveness will not come up. So that it will not, you could say that it will not be a burdensome on the superior to coordinate among them. So there must be certain limit, there must be certain fixed number. Okay, a superior can control maximum number of this and this subordinate. So if it exceeds the number, it will lead to ineffectiveness. The classical scholars are of the opinion that a narrow span of control contributes to a tall hierarchical organization which comes in conflict with the principles of minimum number of supervisory level, implying a flat hierarchy. So, classical scholars, if you have read anything about the principles of public administration, then definitely you would be able to know it. I don't know whether it is in your syllabus or not, but public administration syllabus must contain information relating to the principles of public administration, because what I also believe, or I am also convinced, no doubt, the critical dimensions or critical lens has already been come up with Herbert Simon's writing about the principles of public administration. But at the same time, if you are not aware about what are principles of public administration, then it would be very difficult to understand why actually Herbert Simon was critical about the principles of public administration. So that's why I will recommend you to please read, if any textbook you get, so read the chapter on principles of public administration, or you can also read from collecting information from the in different sites of internet also. So here that so far as while explaining how actually the principles they are they found to be in contradiction to each other. So in that regard, Simon is explaining the case of span of control, and span of control, while we are going for the narrow span of control, then automatically it will contribute towards a tall hierarchical organization. So imagine an organization and imagine the structure of that organization. So while we are saying that at the top level there is one superior who need to communicate and provide command to the subordinate and also exercise authority through this command and communication action. So in that regard, generally we notice that there are proper division. So under there must be many supervisor in an organization, and a designated uh, portion of subordinates essentially found to be allocated under him. So it comes there. So while we are saying there is narrowing down about the span of control, automatically the structure of hierarchy in the organization found to be very higher, taller. Okay, while we are going for then it may create conflict with the principles of minimum number of supervisory levels, implying a flat hierarchy. Okay, so hierarchy as a principle also, of course, if we said hierarchy is I think it is the primary principle of organization, or core principles of organization, where we cannot imagine any organization without hierarchy. So how hierarchy needs to be structured, there is also different kinds of arguments with relating to that, how hierarchy needs to be structured. So in the modern organization, particularly with the expansion of government, and particularly after globalization, that we are now viewing many kinds of organization where essentially hierarchy is found to be in a flat shape, okay, rather than completely in a taller, or you could say in the vertical form. But the inherent nature of hierarchy is always vertical in form, not just horizontal. But as focus on democratization of organization has been gained attention, so that's why that the under the understanding of hierarchy has also been subsequently been gradually changed, that where we are assuming that no doubt democratization needs to be done in the organization, but the um, um, hierarchies, um, uh, orthodoxy dimension of hierarchy needs to be reduced. Okay. Then another principle, the unity of command, implies that in an organization, the employee should receive orders from only one superior. But it contradicts another principle, that is the principle of specialization. So unity of command ask or demands that employee need to obey, or employee need to receive orders from only one superior. So that person is not supposed to receive any kind of order from the others. And while it is coming to the case of specialization, so case of specialization means what? Like suppose that the you could take an example like this, like you take the case of PWD department. So there, no doubt, the generalist, like civil servants need to be there, but at the same time the engineering persons are also there. And here, that engineer presence of engineering persons implies that certain kinds of work, they need specialization, they need to be governed by specialization. Also you could take the case of the medical, the case of the health department also. No doubt the person who is the been considered as designated as secretary, definitely that person is from the general civil service background. But while coming to the issuing of guidelines are concerned, taking policy decisions are concerned, that here that they need to take the opinion of the doctors or the medical practitioners who are also coming under the purview of the health department. So the case of specialization while dealing with issues relating to any activities which require specialized knowledge. So in that regard, employees, they are not only receiving order from their immediate superior, they are also receiving that instruction from the specialized person. So in that context, unity of command essentially does not or no longer persist. And also, if you could say that, like presently under the good governance framework, the departments are asked to collaborate or to be networked with each other. Like you take the department like revenue and disaster management department, forest department, SCST department. So if it is relating to any kind of forest land involving the forest dwellers, so in that regard, here the every regulations needs to be rotated through all the departments. So here automatically it impact the principles of unity of command. So here Simon's concern was that if we are saying unity of command, then the specialization actually affects the idea of the unity of command. They stand in contradictory to each other. So in that way, actually, he was very critical about the principles of organization. And here he argues that principles of organization may be the criteria to understand organization or to assess the organization, but it is not about depicting what is organization, how organizations are behaving. It is completely ignoring that aspect. And the present organizations are highly complex, and due to the reasons of specialization, the specialist would receive orders from technical and as well as general supervisors. So the here that while we are saying, suppose we hand it to government is now likely to switch over to the digital governance practices, and there the concerned ministry and the department, they are likely to have a technical wing, technical head, and they are regularly asking for also the third person to supply necessary supportive arrangement for their work. So in that regard, the specialization as a principle and unity of command, they are conflicting with each other, and it is creating a situation that which needs to be followed at what time. So that's the concern expressed by Herbert Simon. So for him, the principles are actually that merely proverbs, and these are proverbial in nature. And so far as that how actually organization needs to be studied, so these studying those principles are not actually directly provides us observation that how organizations are actually doing. So this slide say that the principles are not scientifically valid and do not have universal relevance, and in his opinion there are little more than criteria for describing and diagnosing administrative situation. So he also finds no compatibility between the perfection of administrative processes as concept in the post carb, okay, post carb formula, that is B. Actually it is D is there, it is actually B stands for budgeting, okay, formula, and their utility in the attainment of objective. So through his attack, Simon points up to the winding gulf the between the principles and practice. So for him, actually, the principles are essentially not really been depicting the practical aspects of the organization, that what he intends to argue, that if we need to study organization, so we need to focus on that how actually organizations are working, how they are doing, under what conditions they are taking decisions. So all these things cannot be or accurately ascertained by studying principles only. Okay, so principles may provide the direction that how organization needs to uh, behave, but or needs to conduct themselves. But at the same time, principles are exactly not telling that why organizations are failing to the or not been able to conform to the particular principles. So a government may take centralized initiatives or maybe take decentralized initiative, or may go for both. So like in the literature of federalism, local governance, we are saying that decentralization also happens through the centralization. So while we are saying that government has come up with the constitutional amendment act, then everywhere decentralization needs to be practiced. So basically such enactment of the act itself suggests that decentralization uh, uh, could be occurred through uniform through uniform imposition by the central government. And this is about the centralization. So that's why that Simon was critical about the principles of public administration, where actually he was not observing any kind of compatibility between principles and the practice. Okay, so that's why he while focusing on just a second. So while focusing on how science needs to be scientific way, or you could say that what would be the scientific way to study the organization, Simon was uh, insisting that there is a need to shift from studying principles to the um, behavior of the organization. So here actually it is about that how administration needs to be defined. So it is the Herbert Simon who pointed out that how actually administration needs to be defined. So for him, administration could be defined as the art of getting things done. Okay, so in our daily conversation also we are using such kind of words, that if somebody is in administration, or while we are managing a crisis, then automatically we expect that the administration needs to handle it, somehow needs to handle it efficiently. Okay, so we are not really expecting that administration will not be able to do this. So we may be critical about the administration, but finally we are expecting that administration needs to do all these things. So it is about that art of getting things done. So here emphasis is placed upon processes and methods for ensuring clear cut action. That what should be the process, how actually the clear cut action needs to be taken up. So that was the concern of the administration. So in this context, principles are set forth for securing concerted action from groups of men. Okay, and Simon is of the opinion that not much attention was hitherto paid to the choice which prefaces all action to determining what is to be done rather than to actual doing. Okay. So, so here actually Simon is asking that there is need to be, not to be more prescriptive. Okay, that what needs to be done. Okay, what needs to be done, or what is the best way to do it. So these are essentially very much normative questions. So if we need to, because science is about to learn the truth na, that what exactly happened, while we are saying that this is science, and considering that science is about to learn about the truth, then we need to focus more on the questions that what exactly happened, how it happened. We are not focusing on over there that what no, it should not be done, what is the best way to function. So that while we are raising such kind of question, we are becoming very much normative. So here Simon is insisting that the focus of the uh, study of public administration needs to explore that the actual doing in the organization. Okay, and the decision aspect. So here he is making the point that the decision aspect did not receive proper attention. According to Simon, without a deeper understanding of this dimension, which is related to the behavior of man in the organization, the study of administration would remain largely inadequate. So here comes the point that one thing you need to remember it very clearly, that Simon, as a scholar, he developed the conceptualization of decision making theory against the proposition that organizations are not merely the study of principles, or organizations are not just merely about the structure. Okay, so then what is organization, how we need to understand organization. So there he is making the shift that in order to understand organization, one need to learn that how our organizations are uh, actually doing. Okay, so what is this actual doing? So this actual doing, here he is referring to the decision aspect of the organization. Okay, so here that while we are saying that what is this decision making of the organization, then automatically the attention of the scholar would be on the individual, or the man who is in the organization, who is supposed to take decision for the organization, and why that person is taking such decision, that needs to be studied, which was actually been neglected in classical paradigms, or in classical theories of public administration. So in that regard actually Simon shifted attention towards the behavior of the decision maker. Okay, so he is not focusing on the relationship between employer and employee, the social bonding. He is not focusing that, like Elton Mayo had focused on the social bonding, the connection between the employees. Okay, that how actually their interpersonal connectivity, their interaction with the colleague actually enable them to perform better. Okay, whereas for Herbert Simon, the organizational performance, rather than dealing with that is the best or worst decision. So Simon is insisting us to understand why actually a particular human being working in the organization, who is supposed to be a decision maker, what makes him to take certain kinds of decision. So while actually explaining this question, he made the distinction between the administrative man and economic man. Okay, so with this question actually we are getting the distinction between that, whether the person who is the decision making, who are in the job of decision making in the public administration or any the organization who supposed to deal with the public affairs. So can we equalize that person with the conception of economic man? So here he is making the distinction that the conception of economic man basically evolves with the understanding that economic man always takes the best decision. Okay, so he as economic man deals with the cost benefit calculation. So this cost benefit calculation automatically rationalizes, uh, makes him rational while taking decision. So any decision which will not actually reflect or carry out the objective of the organization or the profit of the organization, then that decision could not be taken as a rational decision. However, while coming to the administrative man, Simon is arguing the administrative man is essentially not an economic man, because here administrative man always not able to take rational decision because of the surrounding, because of his environment, okay, or the situation or the context where he is located. So his decisions are being informed by many things. Okay, so while taking decision, he can't just from his mind would confirm that okay, this is the best decision. So in that regard, he essentially not takes into account the pressures, the influence, or the available information, so that actually he can't be able to he is not in a situation to ignore them. Okay, so that's why administrative man, no doubt he takes decision. Definitely he takes decision in favor of organization, but that decision essentially not about actually the best decision. Rather, you could say that the decision which administrative man takes, that is a satisfying decision. Okay, so satisfying as a condition to explain the administrative behavior of an organization has come up, evolved as a way to understand how actually organization behaves. So you might have come across of different kinds of examples in your daily life, like while you are studying about the role of government, like you take the situations like corona, while government was too much pressurized to deal with the issues. So like shutting down the mobility, then all these things. So here government uh, was uh, able to take decision. So here we cannot say that government was driven with the motivation of rationality essentially. So here the very purpose of rationality has been shifted, because the purpose of the government was to save the lives of the people. And also you could say the situations like disaster management. You could also say the situations like the distribution of benefits in a block office. So here the concerned administrative man is already surrounded by an environment. So that environment have a continuous influence over him, that how actually he is going to handle the situation. So in that regard, he always not in a condition for providing directions. Okay, this is the perfect way to implement this policy, or this is the perfect way to implement the distribution of those benefits. So that might have with him in the form of guidelines. Okay, but while implementing in the field, so he might not be in a situation always to conform to the existing guidelines. Though definitely he would try to conform to the existing guidelines, but at the same time he need to initiate the step in such a manner that which essentially not been guided by the understanding of economic man. So sometime in order to bring positive outcome, so he also needs to take certain steps so that he could be able to manage the mob, manage the crowd, and at the same time also to follow the rule. So, in that regard, Herbert Simon is saying administrative man is essentially not an economic man. Though he takes decision, but his decisions are not always rational. Rather, his decisions are satisfying in nature and dissatisfying is a condition which is set through the influence from the surrounding environment. Okay, so he suppose the point is that suppose you take the example like in universities or colleges students are studying. So suppose the controller of examination, definitely there is a schedule of examination while a session starts to begin, that okay this would be the end of session, so examination needs to be conducted by the end of this month. So suppose there would be, so if students are not agreed with to them, so suppose they will conduct the protest. So definitely, from the administrator's perspective or organizational perspective, conducting the examination during that time period is essential because it would fulfill their work in time. However, if the students they would not agree with it and they will go on a protest, in under that circumstances, administration definitely cannot just set aside the concern of the student, so the administration will take the middle path. Okay, no doubt that some sort of deferment could be given, but not later than this period. Okay, but at the same time it will also increase the burden on the administration to evaluate the papers, the answer script within the time frame. So it is a kind of satisfying decision, it is not a rational decision. So here, while making that observation, so here Simon had made the point that organizations are always, particularly organizations dealing with public issues or common affairs, they are they are always not finally ended with the rational outcome or the rational decision. Okay, so they are just giving the satisfying decision because finally they have to manage, they have to take into account the constraints which are emerging from their surrounding localities. And secondly, why actually satisfying, that administrative man also had not have with information widely, no doubt while taking any decisions with regard to policy, how it needs to be implemented, administrative man may collect decisions, but ultimately his ability to collect decisions, sorry, information also matters, that how far actually he carries that broad vision. So it is not always found to be uniformly found in every administrator. So that's why also behavior varies from each administrator to another administrator. So in that circumstances, decisions becomes satisfying in nature, and such satisfying concept actually led to create the construct, that the construct of bounded rationality. Okay, so the bounded rationality, these are about, okay, so the bounded rationality as a construct, that where organization or the administrator they used to take, no doubt we cannot just say that ki whatever decision is been taken by administrator, that is completely irrational also. No doubt it is here attempt uh, generally initiated for to take a rational decision, but it always the majority is in many times there is a scope that it will end in the satisfying condition. So in that circumstances, what prevents the decision maker, the administrator, to go for the best decision? So that's why here decision is being bounded by certain circumstances. So with this, actually the concept of bounded rationalities have come up, where Simon is arguing that every administrative man operated through the this bounded rationality. And here, under the bounded rationality, the decision making is always the satisfying one. And here the government organization or the public organization who is supposed to justify the action, that why it has gone for such kind of decision, so his um, motivation to decide anything has always been constrained or bounded by the particular environment or the surrounding environment. So that's why it is necessary to understand uh, how actually decision being taken in the organization. So Simon asserts that we all know that every administrative activity involves both deciding and doing. Okay, so decision is been taken and also action is being taken. It has not commonly been recognized that a theory of administration should be concerned with the processes of decision as well as with the processes of action. So this process is known as decision making process. Okay, so Simon feels that the neglect of this process perhaps stems from the notion that decision making is confined to the formulation of overall policy. On the contrary, the process of decision does not come to an end when the general purpose of an organization has been determined. The task of deciding pervades the entire administrative organization quite as much as does the task of doing. Indeed, it is integrally tied up with the latter. So here, actually, he wanted to make the point that how far actually decision making process uh, is not just that while we are saying okay in the public policy the decision making is been taken, but so far as coming to or formulating that policy, a process needs to be undertaken, and in that process the administrator do have a role. So here that it is integrated with each other. So under that circumstances, that decision making is very crucial aspect to study the behavior of the administrator. So here he is justifying that why actually we need to study the decision making process in the organization. So here he clarified that no doubt the administrator who are not or who are historically not been viewed as the player to take policy decision, but so far as whenever any kind of policy decisions came into picture, that the background information essentially needs the role of the administrator to get engaged and provide that information to the legislator. So in that circumstances also it is related or it is integrated. So these are about the Herbert Simon's argument, and I have also discussed about the concept of satisficing and bounded rationality. So, a general theory of administration must include principles of organization that will ensure correct decision making, just as it must include principles that will ensure effective action. The reason for such an ambiguity, according to Simon, is inadequate diagnosis of the situation and definitions of the terms and lack of detailed research into the real situation. Okay, so if there would be adequate researches on public administration, then sorry, principles of public administration, then definitely would have been Simon would got the response that how actually we need to be very much sure that under these circumstances we need to follow this principle. So here Simon was actually concern about that there was a kind of inadequate diagnosis of the situation and also lack of detailed research into the real situation. So therefore any theoretical construct should possess a frame of reference with universal validity. So while we are saying certain thing as a theory, that means that theory is widely accepted, that knowledge, the idea propounded by that theory is widely accepted. So it is this methodological approach that led to the growth of the study of administrative behavior with a focus on authority and decision making. According to Simon, unlike the principles which have a contextual relevance, the decision making is a universal process and hence can form the base for wider analysis. So these are all about the Simon who not only provided a critical angle to the limitations of studying classical organizational theory, but also he developed a new insight or new directions of research that how actually we need to understand organization where so that we could claim ourselves as very much empirical, very much in connection with the social reality, then only we could be able to say that administration could be studied scientifically. So these things are essentially about the decision making theory. I have not don't want to go on further details, though I have mentioned about the distinction why actually he was critical about the classical theories and particularly the principles of administration. Then he made the distinction that how actually the economic and administrative man differs from each other, and in that regard how the concept of rationality which is usually been attached with the conception of economic man, how actually it shows its trajectory in case of the administrative man. So all these things I have mentioned. So if you have any doubt you may ask. And with this actually I am shifting to the socio-psychological theory. So I'll begin with the Chris Agris perspective. So do you have any doubt till now? Hmm? Any doubt? You, hello, am I audible to you? Are you all there?
Yes, ma'am. We are there.
uh, no, sometimes it remains so silent, na? So I thought I need to ask you.
No,
Okay.
ma'am. Just hearing your lecture only. Nothing else.
Uh-huh. Okay, so here one thing you need to be very clear about it. You may find confusion that okay, Elton Mayo is also talking about the behavior, the relationship. Then also all these Chris Igris, McGregor, they are also talking about that. Then what is the basic difference between them? Okay, so you need to make a clear idea that while we are studying Herbert Simon, we are focusing on the behavioral aspect of the administrator, particularly those who are, you could say that they are the civil servants, those who are taking decision with regard to the implementation of policy, and also those civil servants who are at the secretary level and supplying information to the permanent executive that how to take policy decisions. So in that regard, bureaucracy has a role, no doubt. Public administration is more focusing towards the implementation aspect, but due to the changing times and the necessities, the expansive role of the state and government, what happens that gradually these people, they supplied information to the political executive to frame public policy. So in that regard, they are playing at the you could say that at the backdoor level, they are playing the role in the public policy making process also. So in that regard, Herbert Simon was only focusing on the decision of those civil servants. But while we are coming to the Chris Igris, we are getting the socio-psychological approach. Here actually, the personality aspect, um, it got elaborately focused into that how actually the interpersonal relationship needs to be maintained, and here what would be the role of the management. So all these things will coming under the social psychological dimension, and here that attempt was made to study organization from human centered perspective. Okay, so no doubt human centered perspective have gained primary attention in human relations theory. Okay, but subsequently it got expanded with a primary focus on that employer employee relationship, and how actually the employee needs to improve um, itself in the organization. That was actual, that has become the main concern of the social psychological theory. So let me begin with the Chris Igris. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
So Chris Igris actually the leading scholar who largely talked about the social psychological aspect in the organization, and he is known as a great psychologist and an organizational theorist. He is a leading management thinker who studied organization from the standpoint of psychology. He focuses upon the individual's relationship to the organization. He has treated extensively the conflict between the individual's social and psychological needs and the exigencies of the organization. So, in developing his conceptualization on organizational behavior, Igris has extensively applied research findings in the fields of psychology, social psychology, and human relations. So, while we take the case of Herbert Simon, he essentially talked about, brought his generalization on decision making theory from psychology. Okay, so these are some of his major works, which for which he's been recognized. So where most of the portion is been dealing with the personality, the behavioral dimension of employee, and particularly the inter how there is a need to improve the interpersonal competence in the organization, the method, the action. So all these things. or about his work. So he has attempted to develop a theory of human behavior based on the characteristics of the individual, the work group, and the formal organization. So for him, organization is basically an open system. So uh, here it is something contradictory to the classical organization uh, perspective, that for classical organization perspective, organizations are closed one. So it only it's a very rigid framework, tight knit framework, that where the involvement of the outsider is not a possibility, and even also it is not a very loose one within organization. It is not a very loose one. So for Chris Igris, organizations to be studied as an open system, and in how that open system would be determined through the interaction between the organization and the environment, and also between the individual and organization. So the classical organizational theories, they asked us to uh, that individual needs to be impersonal in nature. Individual needs to be very much impersonal in an organizational sphere. But for Chris, I agrees that there must be regular interaction between the individual and organization, where that each of them need to learn from each other and also need to modify themselves. And particularly Chris agrees was more in favor of the individual or the human resources, that human resource centric needs need to be taken care of by the organization largely. Okay. So, but in case of classical theories of organization, that the interaction between the human and the organization needs to be very much professional in nature, that it needs to be guided by the hierarchical line of communication. So every individual who are working in the organization, they should not deviate from the hierarchy form of control. But in an open system, such kind of rigid abidance to the hierarchical principles was not essentially advocated by Chris Igris. So that's why he talked about organization as an open system. Here organization, where they are located, their surrounding, they need to also interact with them, and also that there must be regular interaction between the individual and the organization. So his first mission was to discover the unintended counterproductive consequences of the classical management techniques employed to design and implement the formal pyramid like organizational structure, production technology, control system, and human control systems such as pay and other benefits. Okay, so here he wanted to develop his understanding about the organization to counter the unintended counterproductive consequences of classical management technique. Okay, so that's why he for him the classical management technique or the classical organizational perspective, they are actually meted with unintended counterproductive consequences, and this was the result of that organization was viewed by them as very much closed group. The latter researches of Igris focus on reasoning at both the individual and the organizational level. His writing suggests that the personal development of the individual is affected by the organizational situation. So, IGRIS research attempts to show as to how the personal development of individual is affected by the kind of situation in which he works. So, I told you na, that he was concentrating his main attention on individual or the employee, where he was observing that the trend, that how actually an employee would be able to develop himself or herself in an organization. So for the logic here is that if employee would be able to expand in an organization, then it would be definitely be beneficial for the concerned organization. And of course, the development of the concerned employee is also supported by the situation where he or she works. Okay. So here he making the point that through organization or organization itself is responsible towards the development of individual. Then in that regard, he pointed out developed a T group technique where he focused on the training sensitivity aspect, which we will discuss it later. Then this is about that how actually organization or what organization needs to focus. So organization needs to focus on that to learn about the personality of the individual working in an organization, because it has a considerable impact on the working of the organization as a whole. So, like we could take the personalities like authoritarian personality, democratic personality, and their presence in the organization. So, he holds that greater importance should be given to the development of psychological energy, which essentially forms the basis of human behavior. Each individual has a set of needs, and these needs release energy in order to get satisfaction. So here you could also you could be able to sense directly that how actually individual uh, matters to Chris Igris um, as an employee in the organization. So no doubt here he alert or informs the management that every kind of act in the organization must be human centered perspective. So the management needs to learn about the needs of the human being, and it should initiate the pathway in such a manner so that it would have a positive impact on the development of psychological energy of the human being. Then and in this that regard, the initiatives needs to be taken up by the organization. So here actually he is not expecting that individual would be the prime mover towards his or her development. Rather, organization would have a substantive impact on the development of psychological energy of the human being. The deeper the need, the greater will be the amount of energy. An individual is likely to put all his energies into meeting a challenge in case he feels assured of the potential satisfaction that he would probably obtain once the challenge is successfully met. Okay. So here, the concerned individual needs to would only be able to meet challenges when he would be acquired with the potential satisfaction that he would be able to meet such kind of challenge. And in developing that kind of potentiality, organization plays a crucial role. According to him, effective management systems must aim at a fuller development of individual potentialities and facilitating open interpersonal relationship. Okay, so only through the enhancement of psychological energy by the individuals and through a better coordination among different functionaries in an organization can a more effective organizational performance be achieved. Okay, so he here directly had given priority to the enhancement of psychological energy and also facilitation of interpersonal relationship in order to develop the individual, um, and to enable him uh, to be a better coordinator among the different functionaries in an organization. So then only the performance of the organization could be achieved. And also, the organization should provide an environment in which an individual is able to develop his personality from a state of infancy to a state of personal or psychological maturity. So, here you could also argue that any individual who becomes the part of a professional organization, so essentially Chris Igris is not assuming that all individuals have already, they have grown up to a stage and they have already have achieved a stage of maturity. Rather, he was concerned with after joining in the organization, the individual will subsequently mature and meet up to the expectation of the organization. But here also organization needs to uh, initiate the actions towards developing, so that the concerned individual would be able to in a situation to acquire such kind of abilities. Okay, so so here that a sense, you could say that individual, um, uh, his entire attention is on how to actually develop individual in an organization. Okay, then how it will possible? Like he pointed out that how an individual will grow up from infancy to the stage of maturity. So it consists of seven development, from infant passivity towards adult creativity, from dependence towards relative independence, from limited behavior to many different behavior, from erratic, shallow, and brief interest to the more and uh, stable and deeper interest, then from short time perspective to the longer time perspective, from a subordinate social position to an equal or superordinate social position, from lack of self awareness to self awareness and self control. So these are the actually the seven development stages through uh, uh, which is been prescribed by Chris Igris, through which a person in an organization could develop himself from an infancy towards uh, maturity. Okay, so these things may appear to you very generic one. I think these are very generic one, and like the most interesting thing I would like to share that while reading about philosophers, sometimes thought might have come to our mind that okay, this philosopher, what he's saying, it is quite obvious, it is quite a general thing, it is quite known thing, then what is actually the difference? So here, if you also read this uh, seven stages, uh, you could also sense that though it appears to be a very simple and general thing, but it is very also from the part of the organization, it is very difficult to implement. No doubt all these prescriptions are towards making individual more mature, and also to have self control over himself, being an employee. Mm. So this is that the personal or psychological maturity could be achieved when the individual has acquired the ability to foresee consequences, to pursue interest consistently, and to own responsibilities equal to superior or what others accept. With such development, the individual having potential will put all his energies into meeting the organizational challenges. So, effective management must aim at development of individual towards personal or psychological maturity. See, here he essentially expect that the initiative for effective human being could be taken from the side of the management. Like you could say that we are generally arguing that if individual will reform himself or herself, automatically he or she will be the best person, the rational person. But for Chris, I guess the logic is something different. That if we want efficient employee in our organization, then management needs to take the initiatives. Okay, so it is very interesting. Okay, so here that the management needs to develop his abilities in order to keep in view the future, and also need to take care of the needs of the organization. So accordingly it needs to prepare the individual to meet the organizational challenges. So it is not merely about to blame the individual for organizational failure. Rather, it is need to go for making individual prepare as per their ability, that how actually they need to be prepared to meet the organizational challenges. So, in that regard, the first thing he wanted to suggest that the necessity of interpersonal competence needs to be encouraged or enhanced. So, Igris feels that to find concern to find the lack of interpersonal competence everywhere in the organization. So people, they do not generally trust each other, so they find excuses for their acts. They stick to their old ways and never try new ones. They feel reluctant in being honest about their own feelings, so they confine themselves to their limited routine task, and frank openness of manner and commitment to the job are lacking. So, in that regard, the necessity of interpersonal competence needs to be encouraged, so that the people who are working in the organization, they could trust each other. And when they would be able to trust each other, then they would be also comfortably able to fulfill their uh, routine task, and also go for new um, uh, uh, kind of work in order to meet the commitment of the organization. Then, with a view to increasing interpersonal competence, IGRIS has specific four types of behavior: accepting responsibility for one's ideas and feelings, showing openness to ideas and feelings of those above and below oneself. So here the interpersonal competence needs to be actually enhanced through, like generally in the traditional way where we used to um, observe the behavior of the people, then generally they usually doesn't go for accepting responsibilities for one's ideas and feelings immediately, instantly. Whatever will come first to them, they will say, okay, this will not happen. No, no, this is not my work. So in that circumstances, that the behavior, the specific type of behavior needs to be um, um, encouraged, so that they would be able to ready for accepting the responsibility of one's ideas, feelings, and secondly showing openness to the ideas. Like people generally, those in working in an organization, they are very much rigid towards their openness. They assume that whatever they have learned, they have practiced, that is the best thing they have. And so they usually reluctant to open towards the ideas and feelings of those above and below oneself. So in that circumstances, increasing interpersonal competence actually enable them to express their openness to ideas and to accommodate the feelings of each other. Then, regarding experimenting with the new ideas and feelings, here, um, it will also the interpersonal, while the scope for interpersonal competence to be enhanced, then they will also ready to go for experimenting with new ideas and feelings, then helping others to accept so and experiment with their ideas and feelings. So, in the context of interpersonal competence, Igris says that top managers must not be reluctant in telling honestly about their feelings or those of other persons. They must refuse to become defensive about what other people tell. So here also he encouraged that such initiative and move needs to come from the top manager rather than from the base level of employee or the middle level of employee. So it needs to come from the top manager so that it will be openly accepted as a norm, so that the every employee would be encouraged to accept the responsibility of one's ideas for one's ideas and feeling. So they must so this approach, according to Igris, is very helpful in reducing tension and conflict in the organization. So it appears to be very simple. Then Igris criticizes the classic theory of organization for creating incongruencies between the requirement of organization and the personal development of individual. Okay, so here that here he talks about that here he is assuming that there is an incongruity between the requirements of the organization and the personal development of the individual. Like suppose we are working in, you might have, whether I don't know how many of you are actually working or employed somewhere else. We generally confront such kind of situation in the organization. Suppose I may want to go for leave or to go for going for any orientation course, being a teacher, but sometimes it is not been approved. So here the demand of the organization is to deliver the work on a routine basis, but but the personal development, that if the person is going for the orientation work, then it is about the personal development. So under that circumstances, conflict generally persist between the organization and individual, that for not allowing the person or not recommending for the granting of leave. So see, these are the kind of example that what you may come might have come across while could be referred in such cases. So he observes that the formal organizational principles makes demand on relatively healthy individuals that are incongruent with their needs. So, as a result of which frustration, conflict, failure, short time perspective are predicted as a result of this basic incongruency. So, to him, formal organization tends to reduce task to minimal specialized routines. There is an emphasis on directing and controlling the individual doing such task through a series of supervisors. Then, consequently, the specialist or the subunits in the formal organization follow their own goals irrespective of interest of the organization and its members. And in such formal organization, the individual is not a forward looking. He is passive, not creative. His concerns are restricted to his own work difficulties. Okay, so here basically he made the point regarding the distinction between, once again, the formal and the informal organization. And he obviously advocated for the informal organization, the trait of informal organization, so that it would be able to take care of the necessities of the individual. Okay, so that's why he was very much critical about the formal organization, where he expressed the concern that the necessities of formal organization is not very much congruent with the needs of individual. So here management needs to take into account the needs of individual. So in that regard, individual development would be a possibility, then subsequently it would be definitely beneficial for the organization also. So but in formal organizations, individuals are not essentially looking forward, be considered as a looking forward entity, because they need to be guided with certain rules and regulations. So essentially it is not about the forward looking. And there the individuals are required to be passive, not creative. And their concerns are restricted towards their own work uh, difficulties. So these are, while pointing towards the limitations of the formal organization. So he advocated for encouraging uh, the formation of informal organization by the uh, management. So, in such situations, executives are likely liable to become yet more autocratic and directive. Like the formal situation, formal organization, or the situations in formal organization, or the conditions of formal organizations are actually making executives to more autocratic and directive. And their excess control deprives employee of any opportunity of participating in the decisions which affect their working life, and giving rise to feelings of mutual distrust. So employees and even lower managers tend to perceive management controls as instruments of punishment. Thus the principles of formal organization, coupled with management control and lack of employees participation in important decision and use of control system. Okay, so it restricts the initiative and creativity of individual. So all these things are actually he pointed out as a critique to the formal organization. So so here that formal organizations are essentially not encouraging the individual to take into the participative mode. And of course the system of control and the imposition of the proper standardization work, all these things are actually uh, create an environment where the lower managers, they are not in a situation to perform in a creative manner. Rather they are being perceived as an instrument to abide by the control. Okay, so control and discipline, which is been considered as the cornerstone of uh, formation of classical management theories, or also public management, public administration, that is being critiqued by through the social psychological approach. So well So Igris formulates certain propositions about the impact of formal organization on the individual. So the major hypotheses in this regard are as follows. There is a lack of disagreement between the needs of individual and the initial demands of the formal organization. This leads to a conflicting situation. One second. So this this separate. Take,
Sugar plus dosele. Sugar plus.
take.
Sugar plus.
Take. Sorry. So here this slide is about actually those propositions or hypotheses which talks about that how actually there is a disagreement between the needs of individual and the initial demands of formal organization. So this always leads to a conflicting situation because individual feels that he cannot fulfill his personal needs and at the same time meet the demands of the organization. Hello, am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, this PPT is not, oh, what happened? It is not working. Just give me a second. The charge is power. अच्छा जी ले तेरा चार्जर कभी गाड़ी में now actually that it works, I think. So this is about the another rigidities of formal organization, and here basically he focused on that how actually the situation relating to the frustration occurred in the context of formal organization and the resultant frustration on the part of the participants is likely to lead a less mature behavior and also create aggression and hostility. So, certain management tension or reactions may produce a sense of psychological failure, the result of which may be loss of interest in work, loss of self confidence, tendency of blaming others, lower working standards, giving up easily, and lastly, a fear of still more failure. So, in that regard, actually, finally, it will not really beneficial for the concerned organization. So Igris asserts that the need of the individual tend to be incongruent with the maximum expression of the demand of formal organization. The informal organization is thus bound to weaken conflict between the two and the resultant frustration. The informal organization serves several purposes. So he was advocated the logic of informal organization in the management. So, briefly, it reduces the individual employee's feeling of dependence, submissiveness, subordination, and passivity towards management. Then, secondly, the informal organization enable him to express his pent-up feelings ranging from outright aggression and hostility to passive internalization of tensions that are caused by the formal organization, directive leadership and management controls, and pseudo human relations program. Okay. Hmm. So these are some of the recommendations that how actually the structure of the organization needs to be. So he talked about pyramidal structure, but pyramidal structure needs to expected to perform limited routine work. Then adapted formal structure need to be modified and need to be make with the scope for more participation. That is the defined but participative structure. So on that, the management needs to take care of that how to make organization participative. Then he argue for the matrix organization. Okay, so in the matrix organization, the each employee has a defined power and responsibility. He can have more control within his sphere of activities and greater participation in decisions about them. In a matrix organization, superior subordinate relationship are eliminated and substituted by self-disciplined individual. Okay. So these are his prescription that how the future of organization is likely to be. Okay. So he basically not negating that the structure of the organization as per the classical organizational theories would not be there, but there is the necessity for modification. Okay, and this modification must be done to keep in view to encourage the presence of informal organization. So the organization of the future will be classical organization, no doubt, but the style of its management will be matrix. Okay. So in matrix based organization, the hierarchy is not essentially the taller one or flat one. Okay. So, here that every branch of that organization is interconnected with each other. So an authority would be based less on power and more on position of expertise and information. But hardly such kind of organization really found. Then effective management must aim at full development of individual potentialities. Greater attention to the training of employees leads to more effective performance. IGRES believes that training enables employees to understand themselves and their situation at work better. He lays emphasis on the T group method, that which I was also earlier mentioned. So T group here basically is about the sensitive training. So here the T group technique generally to be conducted as a program where employees to be given an opportunity to learn the nature of effective group functioning. Okay, so like you just the shape of T. So in the both sides at the higher level, that at the vertical level in both sides, the employees are to be there, and finally they need to come with one single line after their interaction with each other. So the technique is also designed to provide experiences in order to increase the psychological success, self-esteem, and interpersonal competence. So Igris says that sensitive training is not education for authoritarian leadership. Its objective is to develop effective reality centered leaders. The most sensitivity training can do is to help the individual to see certain unintended consequences and cost of his leadership, and to develop other leadership style if he wishes. So in contrast to conventional training program, the focus of T group session is to create an atmosphere in which participant forgets hierarchical identities and develop distributive leadership for decision making. So I think these are the final one. So you could say that the focus of Chris Igris was about to develop interpersonal relationship and within the organization, and the intention is to actually uh, create a space of de-hierarchization, you could say, or you could say limited hierarchy to be explored. And in that regard, both at the level of structural arrangement of the organization and of course at the level of functional level, in both of the level, the necessary changes needs to be done in order to create a facilitative environment for the human being or the employee. So here we can also get certain queries over here, like most of the organization, they used to ask for to submit performance appraisal. When you will work in an organization, maybe public or private, so you are supposed to submit your annual performance appraisal to the organization. So if Chris Igris concern is actually to be taken care of, so how many, we need to understand how many organizations are really thinking about that they need to also go for providing, including a provision on employees feedback. Nowadays they were in most of the organization, they are going for employees feedback through Google survey, or but once again, what about the question of anonymity? That if I am being an employee, I am submitting my opinion about my organization. So whether my identity will not be leaked, or whether my identity will not remain to be anonymous, that surety has becomes also an issue. No doubt, in that regard, Chris Igris' thought seems to be more progressive, maybe more human centered, but it essentially negated down that 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 fault, or the scope of defect could be a possibility on the aspect of human being also. So that concern he had completely ignored. um, in that regard, he also not taken into account the concern that the views of human nature. Okay, like in political science, we do have perspectives on human beings, how actually the nature of human being is likely to be. So the Hobbesian school of understanding, but all these understanding has not really been taken into account by the socio-psychological approach, particularly in the writings of Chris Igris. Um, uh, so here, that if we say that human beings, they are already, they knows their interest, so if their interest would be taken care of by the management, definitely they will perform effectively. But the question comes that whether human beings are really could be trusted with regard to their own self discipline. That's the crucial questions which needs to be asked, particularly for the socials, for those scholars who have focused on the social psychological approach in the organization. Okay, no doubt management is been viewed as a regulator on the employees, but how far actually by developing the informal space, employee would be in a condition to self-regulate, self-discipline himself or herself? That question also needs to be addressed by those scholars who will work on the presence of or the relevance of socio-psychological approach in modern organization. Okay, so with this I am ending. So tomorrow, in the next class, I think it is in the Tuesday, na?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
So,
ma'am. Tuesday.
in the next class, we will discuss about the other two scholars on socio-psychological approach. And also, you need to make a distinction that how actually Elton Mayo and Herbert Simon and all these um, Chris, Igris, McGregor, how actually they differed from each other and what is their commonalities. Okay, you need to also make the or prepare your answers accordingly. Okay, so with this, I am ending. Any questions or query?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then. Okay, then I'm winding up. So we'll meet on Tuesday next week. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
ଯେଉଁଥିରେ ମିଶନ ଶକ୍ତିର ମହିଳାମାନେ ଖାଦ୍ୟ ବଣ୍ଟନ କରିବେ। ମଧ୍ୟାହ୍ନ ଓ ରାତିରେ ଯାତ୍ରୀମାନେ ଆହାର କେନ୍ଦ୍ରର ସୁବିଧା ପାଇପାରିବେ। ଆଉ 5 ଟଙ୍କାରେ ଏସି ରେଷ୍ଟୁରାଣ୍ଟରେ ଖାଇବାର ସୁବିଧା ରହିଛି।
Superstar singer, no Moxley, Ramanji, Sony Entertainment Television Bar.
मैं बस मदद करने की कोशिश कर रही थी। आंटी माँ जैसी है मेरी। उनको
नशे अच्छा है तुम्हारा, गोली छूकर निकल गई। और जाते गहरे में
साहब मैं देखती हूँ, टेंशन मत लीजिए।
ठीक है,
यस सर।
फिक्र मत करना, जिसने बचाया है उसकी बहन बचेगी। यहाँ पे क्या कर रहे हैं?
एक सेकंड, तुम दोनों एक दूसरे को कैसे जानते हो? She's just a part-time waitress.
Waitress. What rubbish say? कोई waitress नहीं है।
Can you please explain me how you know? अगर ये waitress नहीं है तो कौन है?
So she's the same person regarding a customer.
तो वही काम करती हो ना? बस मामूली से वड़ों के लिए रो रहे थे। आयरा कारखानिस सरने माने ऐकलं नाही का कधी? इस लड़की ने मेरी जान बचाई है। मेरे मौत के बीच दीवार बन के खड़ी हो गई लड़की।
Exactly my question. कि ये एक तन से आपकी मौत के बीच में ढाल बन के कैसे खड़ी हो गई? कभी गोली बचा था। Just can't seem to place it.
I know that. हमने तो नहीं देखा। अब तुम लोग कैसे देखते हो? अब तो एक दूसरे की आंखों में जो डूबे हुए थे।
हम दोनों के अलावा भी तो किसी ने नहीं देखा। और उस वक्त तो यहाँ पे अंधेरा था।
अरे सर, आप लोग उसे अंधेरा कहते हैं। हम गरीब लोग हैं सर। हम उससे भी ज्यादा अंधेरे में अपने घर से निकलते हैं काम के लिए। हमारी आंखों को आदत होती है।
गरीब तो नहीं लगती थी।
पहली बार देख रही हूँ मैम। जिसने गोली चलाई उससे नहीं, जिसने जान बचाई है उससे समाज और हो रहा है।
ठीक है, मुझ पे नहीं तो ना सही, कम से कम मेरे काम पर ही भरोसा कर लीजिए। मैं बस अपना काम कर रही थी, मैं सबको सर्व कर रही थी, उतने में मैंने देखा कि इसने आप पर बंदूक तान रखी है। दाढ़ी और मूंछ, दाढ़ी मूंछ। मैंने सिर्फ बंदूक देखी, चेहरा नहीं देख पाई। ऐसा कैसे पॉसिबल है कि तुमने शूटर का चेहरा नहीं देखा? इतने सवाल पे सवाल, एक वक्त इस छतरी में धंसने से बचाना। मिनी की शादी हमें रोकनी होगी। जो तो कौन बनाने की तैयारी है? हम छोड़िए, लेकिन मिनी तो इस परिवार के लिए सही लड़का नहीं है जानती हो। और वही नहीं है, छोटे शहरों में रिश्ते ऐसे नहीं तोड़े जाते। 3 दिन बचे हैं शादी, अगर सबूत ले आए तो ये शादी में खुद ही दांव पर लगी है मिनी की जिंदगी। क्या मौली जीत पाएगी ये वक्त की बाजी? देखिए 5 मार्च रात 9:30 बजे सोनी एंटरटेनमेंट टेलीविजन पर। उसको पता चल गया कि तू खालिया नीचे ऊपर है। तो ये लड़की जो कोई भी है उसकी तय तक पहुंचने के लिए तैयार। मैं किसी युग से सूर्या को अपनी मंजिल के रास्ते में नहीं आने दूंगी। जी मेरी है, मुझे याद नहीं है। समूह रत्न के पास जुबान मारा है, अपनी बेटी का रिश्ता लेकर अरे मेरे माँ बापू जी ने शादी के बाद मेरे माँ बापू जी आजाद मत चाहिए ना, लेकिन अंजलि प्लीज मेरी इतनी सी बात मान लीजिए। पहली बार घर आई तो ये शुक्र आपके लिए। मामी इसकी क्या जरूरत नहीं मिला, खाली आप नहीं जाते। वैसे खाली आप कहाँ जा रहा हूँ? ढेर सारी यादें हैं, आपसे दूर करना ढेर सारा प्यार, नए रिश्ते, ये सारी चीजें अपने साथ लेके जा रहा हूँ। मामा जी मैं सोच रहा था कि रात में कार से जाना काफी अनसेफ होगा। कहेंगे खाना भी अभी खाया है, नींद भी आ जाएगी थोड़ी देर में, रास्ते में खाना तो मैं होटल वापस चले जाता हूँ, फिर कल सुबह आराम से निकलूंगा। हाँ ये भी ठीक है, तो मुझे थोड़ी देर के लिए उल्टी दिशा में होटल क्यों जाऊँ, यही रुक जाओ। हाँ हाँ यही रुक जाओ। अरे मैं होटल में आराम से, वो हमारा घर छोटा है लेकिन मेहमान में हमारा घर बहुत बड़ा है। नंदिनी सही कह रही है। ठीक है जैसा बड़ा है तो चला चल। अभी सो जाओ बेटा, सुबह तुम्हें जल्दी निकलना भी है। मामा जी क्या मैं आपसे एक सवाल पूछ सकता हूँ? आप पूछो। मामा जी नंदिनी ये रूढ़ियों के कुरीतियों के खिलाफ है, ये तो मैं जानता हूँ, पर मैंने ऑब्जर्व किया है कि जब भी उसके सामने दहेज की बात करता है वो बहुत गुस्सा हो जाती है, बहुत गुस्सा हो जाती है। ऐसा क्यों? उसके ऐसे व्यवहार की वजह उसका निजी गुस्सा और नफरत है। दहेज ने दो ऐसे लोगों की बलि ली जो उसको सबसे प्यारे थे। एक उसके बचपन की सहेली ज्योति, जिसने दहेज की मांग से तंग आकर आत्महत्या कर ली थी। वो वाकया कई दिनों तक हमने नंदिनी को नहीं बताया, लेकिन ज्योति की मौत के बाद वो भी बाहर आ गया। ज्योति के अंतिम संस्कार के रात में और बड़ी बनकर बात कर रहे थे। वो बात जो हमने पिछले 18 साल में कभी नहीं की थी। तो मुझे नहीं पता था कि वो हमारी बात सुन रही है। उससे पता चल गया है कि उसकी मां सोनी, यानी मेरी बहन ने दहेज से तंग आकर कुएं में कूदकर आत्महत्या कर ली थी। की थी नंदिनी, जब सोनी ने फिल्म माता बची तो ज्योति ने सामा, लेकिन फिर वो भी दहेज की भेंट चढ़। तो नफरत तो होनी थी ना उसे इस गलती से। मनोहर भाई नंदिनी के पिता उनकी मांगे ही कब नहीं हुई थी। जितना हो सकता था हम भिजवाते रहते थे। लेकिन यहाँ पर भी तो भंडारा नहीं भर रहा है ना भाई। 2 साल की रही होगी नब्बू जब मनोहर भाई ने मेरी बहन को घर से निकाल दी। यहाँ मायके आ गई। यहाँ आकर पता चला कि वो फिर से पेट से कुछ दिन यहाँ रही। सुनिए, अभी को चिंता मत कीजिए। देखो वो अच्छे समाचार लेकर ही आते होंगे, हम अमीर मत। आगे क्या हुआ? बताना तो पड़ेगा ना बेटा की कभी भी डिलीवरी हो सकती है। आपकी माने ने बेटा हुआ तो ही घर वापस बुलाएंगे। मुझे पता है ये बेटा ही होगा, देख लेना। हाँ मेरा मन गया है। और देखना खबर सुनते ही वो भागे दौड़े चले आएंगे। सच में आप चिंता मत कीजिए, वो ठीक हो जाएगा। अगर दूसरी बार भी बेटी हुई तो भाभी कुछ नहीं होगा, सब ठीक होगा। हम लोगों ने रात के सांस लेके चल कुछ खबर देने के लिए मैंने मनोहर भाई को फोन किया, लेकिन किसी ने फोन ही नहीं उठाया। आस पड़ोस वालों से बात करके कांटेक्ट किया तो पता चला कि उस दिन मनोहर भाई की दूसरी शादी। ये तो गैर कानूनी है ना, आप लोगों ने कंप्लेंट की नहीं। जैसे भगवान कर देगा वो कानून से क्या डरेगा। हमारे समाज को तो न्याय तो मजाक हुआ था। मैंने रोकने की कोशिश की, मैं पे भी गया, लेकिन वो मुझे मार के भगा दी। और सुनी पर इल्जाम लगा कि एक साल से मायके में पता नहीं किसका पाप लेके घूम रही। लोग अक्सर अपनी गलतियां छुपाने के लिए दूसरों पर भूल उठाते हैं। रोज रोज के झगड़े, मारपीट, मायके में प्यार, पति की दूसरी शादी, छोटे छोटे बच्चों का बोझ, सबसे बड़ी बात उसके चरित्र पर उंगली उठना। मेरी बहन बर्दाश्त नहीं करता। वही हुआ जिसका डर अरे सुनिए कहाँ है आप? अरे सुरभि बहन इतनी रात को घर से बाहर भागती हुई चली गई है। क्या बोल रहे हो? अरे पता नहीं कहाँ गए होंगे। आप देखिए वरना वो कहीं कुछ कर न बैठे। तुम लोगों मैंने क्या कहा? हाँ देखिए सुरभि, हे भगवान, गायब। आप समझ गए होंगे कि दहेज के नाम से मेरा खून क्यों खोलता है। कोई इतना स्वार्थी, इतना लालची कैसे हो सकता है कि किसी का सोचे किसी दहेज के कारण मैंने अपनी माँ को खोया, बहन से बढ़कर अपनी सहेली को खोया। सभी बहुत बड़ी मुझे मंजूर नहीं। नंदिनी, माँ का बलिदान व्यर्थ नहीं जाएगा। नंदिनी, हमारी शादी होगी और वो भी बिना दहेज के। आप मैं साथ में मिलकर इसका विरोध करेंगे और ये मेरा आपसे वादा है। समर्थन मध्य रही जे एकमात्र नेता हम विभूति बलवंतराय जे कि जटण उन्नति कर पारिबे 2024 रे वर्तमान युवा नेतृत्व को प्रत्येक राजनीतिक दल प्राधान्य दक्षिण हमर खोर्धा जिले रे जो तने आगु सब राजनीति करिया सुथि तो विशेष करी हमर खोर्धा निर्वाचन मंडल रे जितो बहुत दिन धरि राजनीति करछन तो जितो जागा तक दल युवक मन प्राधान्य दल चेष्टा करछ एपटे बीजेपी सामिल होचंती चिलिका विधायक प्रशांत झंटे खोर्धारे प्रशांत को किछि प्रभाव दिबा बिले बीजेपी काम पे उत्साहित बीजेपी को एथु फायदा मिलिबा नै दल आशा बांधुछि खोर्धार संतोष बारे न्यूज 18 मीडिया
आजिर विषय वर्षा पढ़
ଆମ ଓଡ଼ିଶା ନବୀନ
presented more Pari.
Going back to Jaipal, you need to give us the plan delivery.
So again, the words inside we had to overturn. I got a little bit confused in that process. All good to go now. We're going to take on the field. Direct from the goal. There is a direct. And she is gone. Sonata comes into the game for this time and makes an impact immediately. Brilliant in the field. Such crucial moments in the game. They missed a few chances. They missed feeling.
We have number or run out. Can you have the other side of it?
Hard doing for the Giants fans and for Finney Litchfield, who was striking them nicely and probably the key to the Giants getting up there runs-wise. 35. It's 135. That's not what you need for the Giants because now there are two new batters at the crease. If you want to go first run in the midfield.
जय श्री कृष्ण।
जय श्री कृष्ण
Jai Shri Krishna.
जय श्री कृष्ण जय श्री कृष्ण बेटा
जय श्री कृष्ण।
जय श्री कृष्ण
जय श्री कृष्ण।
जय श्री कृष्ण बेटा
तो ऐसा खत्म करना है तालीम से खाने वाले पहले और तो
अरे बेटा तू भी बैठ जा।
हाँ हाँ बैठो बैठो बैठिए जी
नरेंद्र जी आपको तो टेबल कुर्सी पे बैठकर खाना खाने की आदत होगी। आप यहाँ बैठ के खाना खाइए, मैं बाद में खाना खाऊंगी।
प्लीज आप यहीं बैठ के आराम से खाना खाइए। मैं यहाँ काफी कंफर्टेबली बैठा हूँ। इनफैक्ट मुझे यहाँ ज्यादा अच्छा लग रहा है। छोटा बातों खाने से तेज घर में कोई घर नहीं था। और तो वो में नाश्ते में कुछ होता क्या कृष्ण
This struck as well with one bounce is this. It's already shown excellence in the field. Grew up playing football. It's a wicket keeper that surprised me with the nice wicket keeper goalie, I should say. Sports. Both of these players come on as they try and find a boundary. It's going to go, it's really going to get going, it does. Maybe umpire to director. We have umpire view for the bowler. What's the best of techniques as she talked about over the line? She got them. Certainly showing her skills with the ball. Try as Patterson bats. She opened up the first over, deep. Brilliant. Took all the pace off for that last delivery and for the last ball of the innings. And after that partnership between Gardner and Litchfield started to worry the UK Warriors a little bit, they kept it back. They kept the Giants to the highest total though. Is WPL of 142. Runs on the board are always important in this competition, particularly at a chasing ground.
Get the joy content.
It's your game after all. Why be charged to watch it? Watch IDFC First Bank India vs England Test Series. Fifth test starts March 7th live on Geo Cinema.
The 142 on the board. And if you've noticed anything in this competition, is you just got to stay in the game, create opportunities. They can pick up a couple of wickets using the power play, create that pressure. Giants might have a good shot here of knocking off the UP Warriors. John Lewis, actually not head coaches. The UP Warriors, this is the Laker, the mentor. she's a bit of spin. There's no surprise there. But shakes. You're in combination for the Directorites, for Moody, and they certainly got from 40 runs before Moody was down 16 or 60.
उसी को ठनिया कहते हैं। वो के पैर घुटने के नीचे।
ऐसे हो बाएं पैर के नीचे ऐसे लेकिन ये यहाँ पे ऐसे खा बस ये
ले नारायण जी को दे दो।
like thank you जय श्री कृष्ण
जय श्री कृष्ण।
yes और मेरा हार्ट इतनी है कि शीरा लेके खाते तुमका छोड़ अपना दिक्कत शादी तो मेरी पक्की हुई थी तुम्हारे साथ लेकिन लगे वहां तो उसी की कजिन ने रूप आपको के ऊपर थोप दिया न सोचा न पूछा न चॉइस थी बजा दिया तेरा लाइफ टाइम के लिए बैंड जिगर बोल कोई प्रॉब्लम है क्या मोटा बापू आपके होते हुए कैसी प्रॉब्लम
एक मिनट लाडू हाँ हाँ ये लो बस बस
नंदिनी लड़की हम सबकी शादी करके चली जाएगी इस घर से तो ये घर सुना हो जाएगा। ये मेरे पैरों पे मालिश कौन करेगा? मेरे बाल कौन बनाएगा?
बाबा चली गई तो क्या हुआ मोर भाई है ना उनकी बहू करेगा इसे
हाँ मैं तो कब का ले रही हूँ। मैंने ना कब बोला आप अमेरिका की लड़की लेके आई है मैं तुरंत लगन कर लूंगा है।
भाई आपको लड़की अमेरिका वाली क्यों चाहिए
मुझे इधर रहना ही नहीं है मुझे वहीं पे जाना है उधर का सिटीजन बनना है लेकिन अमेरिका की लड़की रहेगी ना तो माइग्रेट होने में क्या इजी हो जाएगा एकदम कब पे सीधा यू टू यू फ्लाइट से यूएसए के हाँ
अमेरिका की लड़की कर चुकी सेवा अरे हेता बाप आपका मेहुल खुद भागने की सोच रहा है हाँ कहेगी वो रानी यहाँ पर मेहुल अमेरिका की लड़की मिल गई तो हेता का क्या हामी मैं हूं ना हेता बा हमारे साथ नहीं मैं ध्यान रखूंगी आपका मामा का हेता बा का सबका
शादी के बाद मेरे कहने का मतलब ये है कि चलो आपकी शादी हो जाएगी और आप किसी दूसरे घर चली जाएगी तो उसके बाद
ये है ना भैलू वो उसकी वो आएगी वो ध्यान रखेगी सबका हाँ और शादी से बचना फेरे नहीं शादी जिम्मेदारी का भी नहीं
नरेन के लिए रिश्ता है सुजान धर्म से शाम को मीटिंग के लिए आ रहे वो अंबाजी किचन में वाले मोटी बाड़ी
मोटा भाई ने मोटा हाथ मारा है
बढ़िया के लोग हैं। बड़ा लेकिन जो एक औपचारिक ऐसा की रिश्वत है।
जानकी वो मिनी की शादी हमें रोकनी होगी।
चोरों को कौन खाने की तैयारी है?
हम छोड़िए मेरे लेकिन मिनी के लिए इस परिवार के लिए सही लड़का नहीं है जानकी वो। वही नहीं है। छोटे शहरों में रिश्ते ऐसे नहीं तोड़े जाते। 3 दिन बचे हैं शादी। अगर सबूत ले आए तो ये शादी मैं खुद ही तोड़ दूंगी।
दांव पर लगी है विनी की जिंदगी। क्या मौली जीत पाएगी ये वक्त की बाजी? देखिए 5 मार्च रात 9:30 बजे सोनी एंटरटेनमेंट टेलीविजन पर। शादी सौदेबाजी में तुम्हारी कहानी अधूरी रह गई है। उम्र में कच्ची, पढ़ाई में कच्ची, बस फोन में रची कच्ची। ये कैसा रिश्ता कर रहे हैं आप?
बाबू जैसे बात छेड़ू हमारी शादी। लक्ष्मी खुद चलकर हमारे घर पर आ गई है। उसको मुंह भी दरवाजा बंद कर दिया। हमारी पत्नी में कोई नहीं रहेगी नंदे। पर प्रेम में आपसे पापा। मैंने अपना मन बना लिया। तुम अपना मन बना दो। अयोध्या में जो विष की फसल लहरा रही है, उसे काटने के लिए आप सभी को लौटना होगा भैया। मेरे श्री राम, माता सीता का स्थान महल में है, यहाँ वन में नहीं भैया। मेरी विनती स्वीकार मत कीजिए। मेरे साथ अयोध्या लौट चलिए भैया। तो रघुकुल का एक पुत्र दूसरे पुत्र से कह रहा है कि वो रघुकुल की मर्यादा का त्याग कर दे, पिताश्री के वचनों का उल्लंघन कर दे। क्या ये उचित है महाराज? आपका यहाँ वन में कष्ट भोगना उससे अधिक अनुचित इस संसार में कुछ नहीं होगा भैया। आप चाहे कितना ही प्रयास क्यों ना कर ले, किंतु मैं आपके बिना नहीं जाऊंगा। महाराज जनक, अब आप ही समझाइए अपने जमाता को। इस समस्या का समाधान केवल तर्क से लिया जा सकता है। कल प्रातःकाल सभा में लोकमत, ऋषि मत, वेद मत और धर्म के अनुसार राम के अयोध्या लौटने का निर्णय लिया जाएगा। यह हमारा सौभाग्य है कि ये समस्या महाराज जनक की उपस्थिति में उत्पन्न हुई है। और राजा ऋषि होने के नाते कल सभा में इस धर्म संकट का धर्म संगत निर्णय महाराज जनक ही निकालेंगे। श्री राम कृपालु श्रीमद राम सिया राम सिया राम सिया राम सिया राम। वचन दीजिए मुझे मां, वचन दीजिए मुझे कि कल सभा में मेरा पक्ष लेंगी, राम भैया को अयोध्या वापस चलने के लिए कहेंगी। पिता की छाया के जाने के बाद पिता समान राम भैया की छाया से मुझे वंचित नहीं करेंगी माँ, वचन दीजिए मुझे।
मुझसे अधिक राम को तुम चाहते हो, फिर भी हाँ कर रहे हो। भूल रहे हो कि मेरी हर बात की संगत काट होगी उसके पास।
जानता हूँ माँ, किंतु राम भैया को अपने साथ ले जाने का प्रयास अंत तक करूंगा मैं, अंत तक करूंगा मैं।
भरत भैया का आपके प्रति प्रेम और समर्पण देखकर मैं गदगद हो गई आज।
भरत का समर्पण इतना पवित्र है, इतना पावन है कि कभी कभी मुझे भय लगता है सीता, कि उसके प्रेम की पवित्र धारा में मैं कहीं बह ना जाऊं। गुरुजी, मैं तो अपने श्री राम का एक तुच्छ दास हूँ, और दास अपने स्वामी से आग्रह कर सकते हैं, उन्हें आदेश नहीं देते, किंतु आप गुरु हैं उनके, वो आपके आदेश को नहीं टाल सकते। गुरुदेव, इस भिक्षुक की झोली भर दीजिए। आप ही हैं जो हे राम भैया को मेरे साथ चलने के लिए कह सकते हैं, अयोध्या का गौरव लौटा सकते हैं। उनके बिना मेरे जीवन का अर्थ ही समाप्त हो जाएगा। यदि भैया मेरे साथ नहीं आए तो किस मुख से लौटूंगा मैं अयोध्या, किस मुख से लौटूंगा। तुम धन्य हो भरत, तुम धन्य हो। जिस प्रकार भक्त की निश्चल भक्ति के वश में आकर भगवान सृष्टि के नियम तोड़ देते हैं और विधि के विधान को बदल देते हैं, उसी प्रकार मैं भी कामना करूंगा और प्रयास भी करूंगा कि राम अपना निर्णय बदल दे और अयोध्या का गौरव
मेडिसिन मेडिसिन खायचं मेडिसिन गाठ